Hi, Allison.
Hi, Abby. So great to be
Welcome.
here. Thank
Great to have
you.
you. We have so much to get into, but what I'd love to start with, if it's okay with you, is how did you become a mom?
Wow, that's a loaded question to start.
Let's just get right into it, you
We're
know?
getting right into the weeds. How I became a mom. I became a mom shortly about 2 years after my husband Kenny and I got married. And I got pregnant, thank goodness, very easily. Had a really, really challenging pregnancy, not really recognizing at the time how challenging it was because I had never been pregnant before. None of my friends had gone through pregnancy yet because I was one of the first to get married and have a baby. And so as I came towards the end of my pregnancy, my body had been, I think, giving me, well, not I think, I know, had given me warning signs that everything wasn't all right. And I had an OB who unfortunately kind of classified me in the same category as this is normal in pregnancy
Oof.
and didn't really listen to me and what I was saying. And it turned out that I went into right congestive heart failure
Mm.
uh, at the beginning of my 8th month. And thank God my daughter Hannah was okay. She was very small, just over 3 pounds. I wasn't in such great condition after her birth, but after about a month, I was diagnosed with a genetic hereditary condition called hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, HHT, which explained why I had such a challenging pregnancy. And I was told the day of my confirmed diagnosis that I couldn't carry any more children.
How old was Hannah when you got that confirmed diagnosis?
About a month.
Oh my God. And
Mm-hmm.
how were you recovery wise? Well, there's two questions I have. One, what were the symptoms that you were experiencing that you were being ignored about? And then, you have a 1 month old baby and you're given this news. What was your state of mind in this state of recovery? And then how did this news affect that for you?
So, to answer the first question, my pregnancy was fraught with severe swelling, not just, a little bit of water retention. My labia, if I can be so graphic, and I
Please.
say to this in my book, was it moved like a cow's udder. So I just so much water that I had trouble breathing. I just could not breathe. And the shortness of breath started about 5 months. Just, I did have mild asthma my whole life growing up, but I, was always athletic, never had any issues with really using my puffer or anything like that. And that's what I was prescribed, a puffer, and, normal shortness of breath and pregnancy. And then I had debilitating nosebleeds,
Mm.
um, which brought me to the emergency room a few times, and just like overall malaise. But the real issue was I had trouble breathing. I just could not get that deep breath.
Mm.
So I had trouble walking. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't doing anything that I had done prior to pregnancy.
Mm.
And at one point, I was just like, I need to go to the hospital. I knew something was wrong. And I'm glad I listened to my intuition. It just took me a little too long to listen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, when everyone's telling you it's fine, it's hard. This is the
It,
plight that we're still in as women, right?
yeah, 100%. So, and a lesson learned to advocate and listen to your nagging intuition that something isn't right. Listen, don't ignore. And then, in terms of recovery after the pregnancy, it took me some time. It was absolutely devastating to learn that I couldn't carry any more children. I had always thought that I would have 3 kids, like the household I grew up in. I have a brother and sister who I'm very close with. So when she told me that, if I were to get pregnant again, I would most likely lose my life, I I didn't hear really anything else other than you can't have any more kids. And then I just kind of went inward and just thought to myself, how am I going to find a way out? How am I going to realize my dream of having more children? I wanted Hannah to have a sibling. How am I going to push forward? And what do I need to do to achieve it?
Mm.
So that was the ending of that doctor's appointment. And fortunately for us, we found a way. But my kids are older, so we went through this 25 years ago, almost
Oh,
26 years ago.
yeah. So some of the options that are more readily available now weren't, I assume, thought of as quickly at that time. So how did you go about continuing to build your family?
Well, we had two options, surrogacy or adoption, and we pursued both. We started with surrogacy. you know 25 years ago, the internet had just really started, and it wasn't like it is today that you could just do a Google search and all these options come up for you. So that in itself was challenging. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and finding an agency that had a reputation. You just didn't want to find somebody without all the checks and balances that are especially in place today. So we managed to find an agency here in Ontario after a lot of due diligence and kind of word of mouth. And then back then also, there weren't that many fertility clinics. It's very different than it is today. And in Canada, the laws are very gray around surrogacy. So the fertility clinics, not all that were available to us, not all of them would work with a surrogate. So
Mm.
we were very limited also in, what clinics we could work with.
How did you even know to start? Sorry to interrupt. How did you just know you knew of surrogacy? It wasn't totally shrouded in secrecy at the time. So you knew this is one of my options, right?
So, yes and no. The only reason I knew about surrogacy, and literally in that doctor's room, I remember my mom was a big fan of Days of Our Lives, the soap opera.
Oh,
And
we know it well in our family. Yes.
yeah, so my mom had told me nothing related to this pregnancy, but a few years earlier, the Deidre Hall, one of the main stars from that
Mhm.
show, had had her children via a surrogate.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, it's funny what we retain, but I remembered that in that doctor's office. And I was like, that's how I'm going to have more children.
Mm. Oh my gosh, which is why it's so important that people speak up. I mean, had she not shared her story, we wouldn't know all these things. Okay. So
Exactly.
so you figure out how to find the right clinic and the right agency and you move forward pretty quickly. How old is Hannah at this point?
Hannah's probably just over a year now when
Okay.
we start to really get into surrogacy. And yes, you mentioned find the right clinic. We found a clinic, and we found a surrogate um, who was a lovely, lovely woman who didn't live far from us, actually. She lived about 45 minutes outside of Toronto. And because of the risks involved with taking fertility meds and my HHT, we tried what at the time was called a natural egg extraction. I'm not sure if it's called natural egg extraction now, but I didn't go on any meds. And the doctor just took out the egg that would have dropped,
An
during the
ovulation.
natural cycle. Yes. And that did turn into an embryo, and that was implanted into our carrier, and that did turn into a pregnancy, which did split, which became identical twins, and then we miscarried
Oh,
9 weeks.
girl. Oh, girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking like, what are the chances that that one to, fertilize and that one became an embryo and that one was transferable? And I'm thinking this is going to be her second child. This is what a miracle, one shot. And then you
Right.
miscarried. Oh, girl, I'm
Then we
sorry.
miscarried. And then we try again as a natural attempt, and the egg didn't even fertilize.
Mm.
And then 7 attempts later, working with 2 different carriers in Ontario, fresh, frozen, not a pregnancy,
Mm,
which for me also was a bit of an eye opener, because the first retrieval we did with fertility meds, I wasn't even thinking that we wouldn't get pregnant. The big quandary for me was how many embryos to put into our carrier.
hmm.
It was like, oh, well, I had no trouble getting pregnant with Hannah. And, now I have embryos I'm putting in 3. Of course, I'm going to have a singleton out of
Right,
this.
right.
And when we didn't become pregnant, that really was an eye-opening moment for me, that this road wasn't going to be an easy one.
And this was pre-genetic testing, so they weren't testing these
Yeah.
embryos, which is why they let you put so many in at a time back in the day. Um, but did your surrogate, now there's all these laws and rules, as there should be, about how many you're allowed to transfer to a surrogate. Did your surrogate need to be on board legally for you to transfer multiple embryos?
Yes, absolutely. We always made this decision together. 3 embryos isn't even the biggest amount we put into one of our carriers because of our doctor's recommendation. And I speak to this in the book, The Miles We Run. But At the time, Abby, I think that when you're going through infertility, and you're, at least back then, and I can only speak to my experience, the only thing you want is a baby.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter how you're going to get it. And if the doctor says this is your best chance because they're the authority figure, then you're going to listen to the doctor, because this is how I'm going to achieve that second child. This is how I'm going to get to my finish line. And to no avail, to no avail.
So I know ultimately you had a larger family. So let's get
Yeah.
to how did this ultimately work for you?
So uh, after another failed frozen attempt, I started to take fertility meds again. I think this was our 8th attempt in Toronto, working with another carrier, not the one that had become pregnant with the twins that we miscarried. We were progressing through, and the carrier called me and decided, even though I was about 3 weeks into my med course, that she didn't want to continue anymore. So a blessing, a bittersweet blessing, because it took us that long to realize we needed to make a change regardless, because it wasn't working here. I often wonder why we didn't pivot sooner. I'm not sure what tethered me to Toronto. I speak to this, but we decided to go into the US, and we worked with a phenomenal lawyer and a reproductive agency, Melissa Brissman, out of New Jersey, and a new clinic, obviously, also in New Jersey. And we started with one carrier that, unfortunately, it didn't work out, and spent almost a year's time with them. Again, things were different. Checks and balances weren't as rigid and strict as they are now. And that led us to eventually the woman who did carry our son, Aiden, and then about a year and a half later, our twin boys, Rowan and Caleb.
She carried all
So
of them.
she did, yes. We had
And
the
did
same carrier for all 3.
incredible. Did Rowan and Caleb split or were they two separate embryos?
2 separate embryos.
And I
Yeah.
think there's a part of your story that involves a reduction. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Yes.
Part
Aiden
of
was a
my
twin.
story as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah. I've listened to a few of
Yeah.
your wonderful
Thank
podcasts.
you.
Uh, Yeah, Aiden was a twin pregnancy, and everything was going wonderful until it wasn't. We had a nuchal translucency ultrasound, which was very new back then, and they found a hygroma on the back of baby B's neck, and we thought that maybe it was an abnormality, maybe it would be something that dissipated over the term of the pregnancy. And what that led me to do is find a fetal specialist, a fetal genetic specialist, in who was at the time in Pennsylvania, since moved to New York, because we brought, when we were pregnant with Rowan and Caleb, we did do CVS testing to make sure everything was fine. But back in Pennsylvania, we did, we went in to find out what we needed to find out. And right away, he said, you need to reduce this fetus because it's going to ultimately take over the entire pregnancy and you will have no babies.
Mm,
So very, very hard.
yeah,
I still get emotional about it. And
of course.
sorry.
Please don't be sorry. Take your time.
More more for the women who have to make these decisions today. It's very different in Canada. And I often wonder, what our situation would be like if we were having to go through this now in certain states, or if we had embryos in certain states. It's a very scary time.
It is. It is. And your surrogate, what an incredible woman.
Very.
Was she okay with all of this? Did it take any convincing? Was she on board right away?
No, she was on board right away. She is a phenomenal woman. And, these are all things that you decide ahead of time. You have to, I guess, look at worst case scenarios
Yeah.
prior to what is supposed to be, a wonderful experience, because, shit happens, life happens, and things come up that you don't expect or you don't anticipate. And all those things happened to us.
Yeah.
So she was, she was wonderful. And during Rowan and Caleb's pregnancy, she totally understood why we would want to do that advanced testing, just to make sure, because Rowan, Caleb, and Aiden they're technically triplets because they're
Right.
from the same batch of embryos.
Mm,
So we wanted to make sure that the genetics were okay.
incredible. Okay. So, uh, let me, like, was your whole life put on hold to pursue your family building?
So I felt like I was living two lives. I had my life happening with Hannah as a new mom, on like on a fast speed train,
Mm,
going way too fast, and all I wanted was for that aspect of my existence to slow down, because she was getting so big and she was hitting all these milestones. And then on the surrogacy front, trying to build my family, it's all about waiting and the patience in waiting, and it was so slow, and every setback felt just so exhausting. And there's so much weight in waiting, and it was very hard. It was very hard. I feel so blessed, beyond blessed, that I had her, because she was such a balm for me in that dual existence, because I got to experience, her growing, even though I was also experiencing such devastation going through, our failed surrogacy attempts.
mm,
There's so much involved with surrogacy. It's not just, finding the right person. It's building a relationship. It's, going on, hormone altering meds that change your physiology, your biology, your psychosis. It's just, there's so many aspects to it. It's not just, finding the right person and then, thank you for carrying my baby.
right. And
There's a lot.
do you still have a relationship with her?
Um, I don't no, we don't speak regularly. She went on to do this, I think, 3 or 4 other times
Whoa.
with other families. Yeah. But she had an early version of my book, and we are on Facebook together, and I will never forget what she gave us. Essentially, I will never forget her, and she will always hold a very special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't call what we have now a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, but I do think of her so fondly, and how could I not? She
Sure.
blessed me with, 3 of my 4 kids.
Incredible. So, at what point did you decide you want to write a book?
Well, I journaled our entire surrogacy experience. So I knew that I wanted to provide our unborn child with something tangible that they could understand what we went through in order to have them, and how much love they were born into prior to even conceiving them. So I kept a very detailed journal of 4 years. And when Rowan and Caleb were born, I knew that I had a book. I knew that I had a story worth sharing, but I was in the throes of raising 4 young children, and it wasn't the right time. And it was very raw, and it was still very I real. And I almost think that, I just wanted to move forward with my life. I felt that if I had gone back and written the book then, it would have been almost regressing and living through it again. And I wasn't ready to do that. So I put the journals away. And as my kids got older and started to get towards the end of high school and be in university, I took out those journals again to see essentially what I had. And, if my story would resonate and possibly help others who are on a similar journey. And so I started writing a narrative version of it. And I, you know, I feel so grateful on how it's come together, and the feedback that I've gotten from whether people are going through fertility or surrogacy, or it's really universal in the way it speaks, because we all run marathons, maybe not literal marathons, but metaphorical ones. And we all have an inner strength that sometimes I don't think we realize that we do. And we call on that resilience so much of our lives that maybe I hope the miles we run serves as almost a reminder to look back over your own hurdles, your own obstacles that you've overcome, to recognize that resilience within yourself.
Mm.
So when I was rereading my journals, I I could not believe that that had been my life. I never took any time to really process what I had been through, what I had achieved. And I'll get emotional again. It's just I was so proud of myself.
Good. Good. Well, the thing about resilience, I say this all the time, and your story speaks so poignantly to it, is like we don't choose resilience. Resilience happens to us because everyone is going to go through some form of hardship.
Right.
How we emerge and how we're able to become self-aware on the other side will determine if we build resilience. So giving yourself that time to really review it is incredible and lucky and smart and all the things. Um, when did you decide you wanted to run the marathon?
So I was coming on to 50, and I've always been a runner. And I decided that, for my 50th, if I was going to run a marathon, it was going to be the New York Marathon. And
I have to tell you that I grew up in New York City along the marathon path. So every year we
okay.
would go out and cheer and
So
pass
then,
water. Yes.
yeah, yeah. One of the most incredible experiences of my life, for sure. Just the energy in that city. Until you experience it, it's very hard to explain.
Yeah.
Um, but I started training for the marathon once I decided, like COVID threw a bit of a wrench in my plans for 50. So I ran it at 51. And as I was training for the marathon, when you start passing 13 miles, you really start to get into the heavy of the run. You really start have to dig deep and find very similar qualities that I had to pull up on going through surrogacy. So patience, resilience, hope, uh, all the feels that got me through surrogacy really helped me achieve crossing that marathon finish line. And I thought to myself, what a wonderful way to weave a story of how I became a mother through surrogacy and parallel it with a literal marathon, but almost in a metaphorical way. Because as I said earlier, none of us have like a straight road, a flat road. We all have like hills, and
Right.
some are way more challenging than others, but we find a way to get over them. And that's running the marathon and training for the marathon. I realized how similar two totally different experiences were, but yet how they called upon the same shared qualities.
Mm. Do you find these qualities emerge in other parts of your life in terms of the work that you do now or with your children, parenting?
That's a great question. And yes, 100%. I think going through, I can only speak to myself, but I know that the way I became a mother through my pregnancy with Hannah, and, almost losing her and myself on the same day,
Mm.
and the battle to have my boys made me a very different parent. And just the patience and the gratefulness that, I recognize, as a mom, we all have hardships with our children. There's a lot of messy in there. But even in the messy, I have found the gratitude. And that has definitely shaped, how myself and my husband, how we parent our children. And it's it's very interesting to see.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's been very interesting to actually realize that.
Mm. And I know now you work with women, I think over 40, which of course neither of us are, but um,
Right.
you know, and their body strength, building, all these things. I think it probably comes into play even there.
Absolutely. So when my boys were, I have an environment, I have a master's of science. I have an environmental background. I used to work for a big engineering firm, but when, my boys were born, I wanted to be more present. I didn't want to work outside of the house, and I wanted to make my own schedule. So I got into something that I loved, which is fitness. And I wanted to be able to make my own schedule so I could do school drop off and school pickup and all of those things. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. And yeah, women's health is so vitally important, obviously. And I'm so happy that there's so much more education and information information and discussion around women's health and strength training,
Yes.
and the importance of, doing hard things with our bodies to better our own mental health, our physical health, mind and body work together. So yes, I love, I have a personal training business where I see clients in my home studio, and then I have a platform where I have membership all over Canada and the US, ABS
Yes.
Fitness. And yeah, workouts that are very doable
I
and
love
very
this.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
So,
asking.
of course, we're going to link out to everything, including where you can get the book and your whole platform. I like to ask in closing, is there any, I mean, I feel like your whole story is a piece of advice, but is there any piece of advice that you live by or like to share often, or a phrase, a cliche, anything you think about?
I think that after running the miles we run, the most poignant thing that has stuck with me is that hope is a brave and deliberate decision. We
Mm,
choose hope.
such a good one. Such a good one. Allison, thank you so much for being here. Oh, I had one final question that's completely
Oh,
random and not tied to anything. I mean, it
sure,
is, but
Abby.
it's tied to like hours ago in our conversation. Can Hannah be tested for HHT? Because you said it was congenital.
Yes. Well, it's genetic, and
Yeah.
all my kids. So my
Oh,
kids
right.
are,
All of
yeah,
them.
all of
Sure.
them. Yes. So HHT can be tested genetically, and they all have been tested because they've isolated my gene, and great research is being done on HHT now. But that would never have prevented me,
Of
even if
course.
we had genetics been done on the embryos. Two of my kids have it, two of them don't, but the thing with HHT is it presents itself differently in everybody.
Hmm.
So, I have liver and lung involvement, HHT. That's why I wasn't able to carry any more children, because when a woman becomes pregnant, their blood flow doubles. Mine is already doubled because my liver shunts blood through my heart at a double volume. So when I became pregnant, my blood volume quadrupled, and that's why I went into right congestive heart failure.
Mm.
So my kids who have it don't have it like I do. They have a
Okay.
couple broken telangiectasias,
And
which are
so,
blood.
unless something presents itself, they're fine. And it's good to just have the awareness that they have it.
Yes, they've been tested. There's a wonderful facility in Toronto. Dr. Marie Fonin runs the HHT clinic here at St. Mike's
Amazing.
Hospital. Yeah, there's HHT centers all over the U.S. also.
Amazing.
Um, yes. So, but
Okay.
that's a good question. I
I was
appreciate you
just
asking
curious. Yeah, let's go back
that.
to the better ending, which is hope is a choice. I think that's the point.
It is. It is. It is.
Thank you
Yes.
for being here, Allison.
Thanks so much, Abby.